Congratulations, folks. You made it to video 6, the last in the series of how businesses can make tax season a bit easier for themselves and their CPA. To recap, before we talked about our last topic, we have the prep work for year-end close and tax season starts on the first day of the fiscal year of the tax year. So start at the beginning, not after the fact. We talked about how reconciling needs to be done to a number of balance sheet accounts. The bank account, yes, but also credit cards and loans. And there's 2 steps to reconciling. First, marking off the things that are on the third-party documentation as actual real transactions that went through your account. And then investigate and follow up on anything that is not clearing. Those transactions are either erroneous or they need follow-up to figure out what's going on. And then when it comes to keeping your books clean and reconciling, we never want to change the past. So once you send stuff off to the CPA, that's it. You can't change those prior years, including the year you closed. And so that's why it's such a good idea to set those closing passwords and dates. So as soon as I send stuff off to the CPA, I lock the books. I can tell the CPA what the password is. And then nothing else is done to those books except for adding the adjusting journal entry from the CPA, which is the last of the documents that you collect for the tax season. Want to be really careful about the changing of the past because that can take up a lot of people's time and energy to get things back on track. And then we talked about S-Corp Medical because it's one of the most common problems with people's bookkeeping. And nowadays, CPAs are not being slackadaisical about it, like, oh, I'll just put it on the personal tax return, don't worry about it. That's what they said 10 years ago. Now they're like, it must exactly match with what you paid for medical insurance or for all medical, dental, vision throughout the year. And it must match exactly, or you have to amend returns and fix it. And amending returns, that's a real bummer. For those of you who have assisted payrolls of some sort, you'd have to go back to them and ask them to fix it, and that can take months. Like, it's often faster to amend it yourself without asking for the help of the payroll processors because it can just take forever. And sometimes it doesn't get done correctly. It's kind of scary out there. So the last thing we're going to talk about, the 5th thing, is W-9s and 1099s, but specifically W-9. So you should do a W-9 audit September, October every year. And the best way to do it is you create a report, and a memorized report that you have that shows for the current fiscal year all the vendors that you paid that were coded to certain accounts, because W-9s get collected for all service providers and anybody you paid rent to, including equipment rental. And so you want to be collecting those W-9s before you ever pay the person. The audit allows you to compare the vendors that are in the 1099 accounts and then the list of vendors and the tax ID numbers that you have so far. The tax ID numbers tell you, oh, I must have the W-9 on file because I have their tax ID number. So it's a shortcut. I must have the W-9. So you're going to look for people that are in your service or rent accounts, and then you're going to see if you have their tax ID. If you don't, you need to collect the W-9. Now, the rules are you should collect the W-9 before you ever pay the person any money. There's too many old school bookkeepers out there, I'm talking to you, that wait until January to see who you paid $600 or more to. That's the wrong direction. You're supposed to get a W-9 before you ever pay them a cent. It doesn't matter how much. It's true that for the 1099s, which are due every January 31st, the 1099 rules state that you give them to service providers and people you paid rent to that are not corporations and you've paid $600 or more. So those are the 1099 rules. That's not the W-9 rules. So because we're talking AI, let's talk to Gemini here and say what is the penalty for not providing a W-9? Okay, what is the penalty? So here it is. I have a little list here. So if you do not have a W-9 in your hand when you go to pay the vendor, you're supposed to withhold 24%. So if a vendor refuses to give you a W-9, you say you have two choices. Give me the W-9, or I'm going to pay you 76% of what we owe you, and I'm sending the rest to the government. Trust me, you will get a W-9 quite quickly. The other penalty, see if it lists it here. So there is a potential $50 penalty every time somebody asks you for a W-9 and you refuse. There are some old school bookkeepers out there that absolutely refuse to give a W-9 out because they say, we are a corporation, we do not have to give you a W-9. That is false. If your bookkeeper is doing that, tell them to stop immediately. If you own a business, you should have a W-9 on file, and when anybody that paid you money asks for it, you give it to them. And if there's anybody that you just signed a contract with and they will pay you when they ask for it, you give it to them. Imagine the $50 fines multiplying for that grumpy bookkeeper that refuses just to provide the W-9. It's just not worth it. So there are penalties related to W-9s. So what we need is whoever hires the contractor. So it could be a project manager working out in the field. It could be your salesperson hiring someone to help out with marketing. They all need to know vendors have to be onboarded. When they sign up for a service, then they need to tell the accounting department, and then the accounting department will onboard them and get all the necessary documents, specifically the W-9. We need to ensure, and business owners, I'm talking to you, we don't want anybody with a checkbook out in the field paying people and not having them onboarded first, okay? And so it's really better to have all the payments run through your bookkeeper so your bookkeeper can keep an eye on this stuff and make sure that they get a W-9 before they pay the vendor. And unlike employees that you have to pay if they've done work, vendors, you can just be like, nah, dude, you're not getting any money till we get a W-9. So we're holding your checks. Let us know when you're ready. And if we don't get your W-9, by the end of the month, we're going to send you 76% of what we owe you, and we're sending the rest to the feds. Those are the choices. And none of us want to collect taxes for our vendors. Like, that's not what we're in business to do. And so we need everybody to play ball. That includes us. So anybody that's listening to this, if someone asks you for a W-9 and they're going to pay you money or they have paid you money, just give them the W-9. And this brings up then red flags. So what are some of the red flags related to W-9s? Well, the first one is giving someone a 1099 and a W-2 in the same year. So the only people that get to decide who an independent contractor is the government. Their rules decide who an independent contractor is. Business owners cannot just say, well, Fred, I talked to him and he's just going to switch and be a subcontractor because he wants to write off his home office expense, and it's just easier if he's a contractor. If he's only working for you, he is not a contractor. To be an independent contractor, one of the rules state that you have to work for at least 2 or 3 other companies or 2 or 3 other clients in a year. It doesn't have to be other companies. So Cousin Bob that you want to do IT work, well, if he has a 40-hour-a-week job as a software engineer, you can have him do your IT work as an employee. But he can't be a contractor unless he's actively marketing his IT services to others and he's working for at least 2 or 3 other people during the year. If that means your mom and Aunt Edna are paying for his IT work, sure, whatever, but he's got to have money coming from somewhere else through as an independent contractor. So that's the first one, is you never want to have W-2 and 1099 same year. Your design manager says, hey, I'm opening up my own design company and I want you to be my client. So I want to stop being an employee. I know I'm going to lose my health insurance and stuff, but that's fine. And I want to move to an independent contractor. That's great. Emily, that's amazing. And guess what? You can do that on January 1st. But we can't have you switch from being an employee to a contractor in the same year. It's going to look weird, right? So that's a red flag you want to avoid. The other red flags when it comes to W-9s are using a social security number. All of you dear friends that are out there right now, if you have your own business and you've been using your social security number on those W-9s, please stop. Get yourself a TIN, also called the EIN. Just sign up for a tax ID number. It's way safer. Trust me, I've been out in the world and I've seen filing systems at companies. You do not want your social security number floating around out there, right? It's not a good idea. And so to protect yourself and your identity, I want all of you using tax ID numbers or EINs. So if you have somebody that's working for you and they're using their name and their social security number, it's not that it's wrong. They could be an independent contractor and they could have 30 other clients they work for, right? Could be the person that does your mow, blow, and go, where they come in and they mow your lawn and blow the leaves away and then leave. They might use their social security number and have lots of clients, and that's okay, but it does cause a little red flag. So we want to make sure for folks like that, you want to ensure that you have proof that they're marketing their services to other people. Maybe it's a copy of their business card. Maybe you save a PDF of their website, but something that shows they're marketing their services. And then you also need to make sure that they're working for multiple other people. And maybe that's a little questionnaire. When I taught QuickBooks class at a local community college, every year when they did my contract, they gave me this little piece of paper that had all these yes/no things, and it proved I was a contractor. It was a worksheet where you could answer the questions and it would tell you if it's an employer or a contractor. So there's lots of rules about independent contractors. So if we pop down here and we say, let's see, do I have, cancel that. Who is an independent contractor? There are specific rules about who an independent contractor is, and you definitely can read through this and understand it yourself. So we need W-9s from all of our landlords, including if you have a shop separate from the office space, if you have a storage unit, all of that is rent of space. So all those are W-9s. And then anybody that you rent equipment from, so maybe you have a local rental yard that you rent equipment from during the year, you would need their W-9. And then if you say rent a printer, sometimes people have giant printers that they rent, that would be a W-9. And we need to have the W-9 to prove, number one, what their real name is and what we need their tax ID number. It also says what kind of entity they are, and the type of entity then decides if they get a 1099 or not. So that entity is very important. But one of the most important parts about that form, which is why we need those grumpy bookkeepers that are refusing to provide it to start just providing it, is you're signing it to say you're not subject to backup withholding. And that's what that 24% is. Without the signed form, we have to assume you're subject to backup withholding. And so we keep the 24%. When you sign the W-9, you say, I'm not subject to backup withholding. And now we know we can give you 100% of what we owe you. So The grumpy bookkeepers that say, I don't have to give a W-9 because we're a corporation, are missing the point. They're missing the fact that there's this backup withholding piece that's covered by that form. So if somebody refuses to give you a W-9, they have to at least give you replacement data, like all the data in a different form. So they have to like send you an email saying, this is our true company name, this is what kind of entity we are, and this is our tax ID number. So they still have to provide it. So they might as well just provide it on the form. Make sense? The last thing you want to do, and the last thing you want your bookkeeper to do, is chase after W-9s in January. It's just crazy making. It makes no sense. So just like your employees get onboarded and fill out a W-4, contractors get onboarded and fill out a W-9. And it's any service provider. So the last thing I want to cover for this section is just to go over who the independent contractors are. You can see there's determinations here that make people a contractor or not. It's behavior, financial, and types of relationships. And so these are the key components for the federal and state level laws. Most people get the landlord of their office, but they forget about all the other rent they pay. Most people get the subcontractors. They know they need a W-9 from subcontractors, but they forget about all the rest. So let's go through all the rest. So contract engineers, contract architects, contract designers of any form, anybody that you pay to handle like your social media marketing or constant contact emailing. So any kind of marketing support person, contractor, that's a W-9 event. The person who manages your website and does your website design. The person who does your graphics design, like creating your logo. Those are all people that are W-9'd. And then we get into consultants and coaches. Any consultants and coaches, any people that come in and do trainings or professional development, those are all W-9s. Anybody that does repair and maintenance, and that's repair and maintenance at your facility or repair and maintenance of your vehicles or equipment, all those are W-9. Those are all service providers. And I know getting a W-9 from your mechanic might be difficult, but we're going to talk about that in a moment. And then we have the accountants, the bookkeepers, the HR support people, and the lawyers. All the professional fees, those are all W-9s. And so there are a lot of W-9 vendors out there. And probably about 25% of the companies I work with have that all dialed in and solid. And the rest of them are missing pieces. And usually what they miss is the overhead people. So now, what do you do if someone doesn't give you a W-9? Well, we talked about it earlier. If you're always collecting a W-9 before you ever pay the person, they will get you the W-9 because they want their money. So when you have the power, get it done, right? Get that form while you have the power. Afterwards, in January, the following year, you no longer have any power. They've got their money. They're going to ignore the $50 penalties, My suggestion, you could talk to your CPA about this. My suggestion, if somebody refuses to give you a W-9, I would send in a 1099 with all the information I do have and the tax ID number missing. Because I'd rather that you turn in the form and show that you're reporting than to skip it, because what we didn't look at yet, we didn't ask the chat GPTs, but we will right now. What is penalty for not sending 1099s? Information returns, which include 1099s and W-2s. In 2026, up to 30 days late, $60 each form. 130 after August, $340. Intentional disregard. And intentional disregard is you should have collected the W-9, you didn't do it. You should have given them a 1099, you didn't do it. $680 per form. Some of the companies that I work with are huge. like 40 forms, right? They sending out 40 forms. So let's do some math. If I had 40 1099s I should be sending out, this is like a bigger construction company, that is $27,000 of potential penalties if I don't send any out, right? So that's a pretty good chunk of money, right? The penalties are not small. So I'd rather you send in the 1099 without it. And I would probably tell the vendor that, listen, you're not sending us the W-9. We have to assume you're eligible for a 1099. We are going to send it in to the IRS without your tax ID number. And, you know, maybe then those corporation bookkeepers that refuse to give you a W-9 will give you one just so they don't get the 1099. This is an important topic because if you get busted, and the way you normally get busted is state unemployment audits, either random audits where they come in and they dig through your bookkeeping and they look for anybody that looks like they were paid as a human with a social security number, not a company. They're going to ask, they might go back to the vendor and say, hey, cousin Jim, who else do you work for as a contractor? And that's, I was with a client when they had an unemployment audit, and $100 they paid to a family member for IT got flagged. And the rep said, if this was any of my coworkers, they would be following up on this and talking to this person and finding out if they worked for other people, and there would have been penalties for this. But she's like, I'm going to let it go, but never do it again. So that's one way you get caught, is the random unemployment audits. The other way you get caught is the contractor. Let's say they worked for you last year for 6 months and then they went on their way, but they lost their day job because they were just helping you out on the side. So they lost their day job and they're going to the unemployment to get benefits. They get asked at least 3 different times, did you work for anyone else? Are you sure anybody else? Because we can get you more benefits if you worked for anybody else. And they're going to say they worked for you. And then the unemployment office is going to look to see if there's record of you paying unemployment taxes for this employee, and they're not going to find anything because you paid them as a independent contractor. And then that's going to start a new audit, and they're going to come in and audit all your stuff. So it's most likely going to get caught at the state level. It is possible that you could get caught. So in my opinion, if you want to make tax season easier on yourself, don't fiddle around with avoiding things like W-9s and 1099s. Just do it right from the beginning, and it'll be way less stress for everybody. So this concludes our 5 things that businesses could do better to make tax season easier on them and make tax season way easier on the CPA. Thank you so much for being here with me and making it through this training. It's so important for business owners and bookkeepers to hear this information. And all the things we talked about are covered in much more detail in software examples in the year-end close class. So no pressure, folks, but use the YE100 coupon code if you'd like to sign up for the year-end class. That coupon code is good through December 31st, 2025. So if you'd like to sign up for year-end close, do it soon, because the year-end close is really meant to step you through all the audits and things you should be doing starting in like September. And while we're past September this year, you can still get all the things done as long as you're committed to making sure that you have beautiful, clean books. Thanks again, folks. I really appreciate you being here with me. I'm so honored to get to share all this information with you. And again, thank you to the Eugene Chamber of Commerce and Peak Credit Union for allowing me this platform so that I can share my knowledge with you. Take care and happy tax season.